Fragmenting Byzantine Control, the 11th century. About the time of Bulgaria's destruction, Serbian Zeta, then known as Duklia, was brought under Byzantine control. During the mid-1030s, however, a Serb rebellion placed Stefan Vojislav, ca. 1034–43, on the Zaten throne. Although the Byzantines initially suppressed the uprising and captured Vojislav, he managed to escape imprisonment in Constantinople, return to Zeta, and lead a successful guerrilla war against the imperial troops sent against him. An uprising in the Byzantines' western Bulgarian lands during 1040 kept them distracted and aided Vojislav's resistance. Typifying the poor political judgment of Basil's successors, the taxes paid by the subject Bulgarians had been converted from in kind to cash, and then their rates were increased, causing increasing discontent. Exacerbating rising Bulgarian unrest, Emperor Michael IV, 1034–41, had replaced the Slav Bulgarian Archbishop of Ohrid with a Greek appointee without consulting the Bulgarian bishops. In 1040 in the northern Bulgarian lands, a rebellion erupted led by a certain Petur Delyen, who claimed to be Samuel's grandson. Delyen was crowned Tsar in Belgrade amid widespread local popular support, after which he pushed south into Macedonia and the empire's Greek territories. To counter Delyen, a Bulgarian pro-Byzantine agent joined Delyen, came to share the leadership, and split the rebellion. Within a year Delyen was eliminated and the rebels intentionally led to defeat. Byzantine preoccupation with Delyen's uprising permitted Vojislav, from his capital at Shkodër, Scutari, to assert Zeta's independence. Failed imperial attempts to oust him resulted only in Vojislav expanding his territories to include Zahumli and part of northern Epiros. When he died in 1043, Zeta was the leading Serbian state in the Balkans, but its strength was fragile. Joint rule by his 5 sons degenerated into sibling rivalries and political instability until one brother, Mihailo, ca. 1046–81, emerged as sole ruler. Mihailo concluded a peace with Byzantium and married a relative of Emperor Constantine IX Monomachos, 1042–55, thus preserving his independence and avoiding vassal status. His position buttressed, Mihailo consolidated the state's territories in the hands of his sons at the expense of his brothers. Then he conquered Raska between 1060 and 1074. Mihailo's accommodation with Byzantium was more a matter of expediency than of sincerity. In 1072 he supported an anti-Byzantine rebellion in Macedonia led by Georgi Voida, a Slav landowner from Skopje. The uprising was timed to take advantage of 2 disastrous Byzantine defeats during the previous year at Manzikert, to the Seljuk Turks, and at Bari, to the Normans. The empire was seriously damaged by both defeats, permanently losing most Anatolian and all Italian possessions, respectively, and its military capabilities plummeted to a new nadir. Despite their crippled military, the Byzantines managed to defeat 3 Zaten armies sent by Mihailo to aid the rebels, and in 1073 the Macedonian rebellion collapsed. Contacts with the papacy in 1077 brought Mihailo a royal crown blessed by the Pope. This diplomatic move gained him a powerful Western ally in the papacy. Through it he also received potential cooperation from the Normans in Italy, who were inveterate enemies of the Byzantines. Presumably this alliance also might constrain the Normans from attacking Zeta during their invasions of the Balkans' Adriatic coast. In addition, Mihailo sought an independent church for Zeta, as all good sovereign Christian states theoretically needed. Zeta possessed no church metropolitanates, its Christians came under the authority of the Ohrid, Durrës, and split prelates. Alienated from Constantinople, Mihailo sought a Zaten archbishopric from the papacy. By Mihailo's time, the Great Schism of 1054 had divided medieval Christianity into 2 distrustful camps: the Eastern Orthodox, led by the Patriarch of Constantinople and supported by the Byzantine Emperor, and the Western Roman Catholic, headed by the Pope and supported by most Western sovereigns. Since both Ohrid and Durrës were under the Orthodox Patriarchate's authority, Mihailo expected the Pope to leap at the chance for increasing Catholic jurisdiction in the Western Balkans. Apparently the papacy did not immediately comply, and an archbishopric for Zeta was not forthcoming. Elsewhere in the Balkans northwest, Byzantium's troubles were compounded. During the 9th and 10th centuries Venice, a titular imperial possession, developed a powerful navy. Unable to maintain an active presence in Dalmatia because of the Bulgarian wars, and with their Croatian ally in internal disarray, the Byzantines became dependent on the Venetians to defend and administer the Dalmatian coast. Basil II named the Doge, head of state, of Venice his official representative in Dalmatia, and the region's cities submitted loyalty oaths to the Venetian head of state, although they continued to be self-governing in practice. Basil II, named the Doge, head of state, of Venice his official representative in Dalmatia, and the region's cities submitted loyalty oaths to the Venetian head of state, although they continued to be self-governing in practice. The relationship between Venice and the Dalmatian cities was uneasy, since many Dalmatians viewed Venice as a commercial competitor and its enhanced imperial position threatened their own trade interests. A few Dalmatian cities, led by Dubrovnik, refused even nominal Venetian control. Possessing a growing merchant fleet of its own, Dubrovnik strengthened contacts with Byzantium and won recognition as an imperial province in its own right. Other Dalmatian cities joined with Croatian pirates in preying on Venetian ships in the Adriatic, but by 998 Venice had defeated the pirates and attempted to make Basil's recognition of Venetian imperial suzerainty over Dalmatia a reality. In Croatia, Drusislav's sons were at each other's throats over the state's rulership. Venice insinuated itself into the civil conflict by supporting the eldest brother, Svetoslav, 997–1000, and holding his son hostage. Although Svetoslav was overthrown by his younger brothers Kresimir III, 1000–30, and Goyaslav, 1000 to approximately 1020, the fact that his son remained in Venetian hands meant that the new Croatian joint rulers faced the threat of Venetian intervention. A game of competing nominal suzerainty over Dalmatian coastal cities ensued between Venice and Croatia, dying down in 1019 when Basil II reclaimed all of imperial Dalmatia. Croatia submitted to Byzantine vassal clientage, and soon thereafter Venice fell into civil war. Croat ruler Kresimir found the Venetian situation advantageous. He reasserted control over the Croatian Dalmatian cities, and, after Basil's death and the neglect of Dalmatian matters by his successor Constantine VIII, 1025–28, he ceased paying homage to Constantinople. The Venetians won some territory from him, however, and the Magyars, pressing from the north, took Slavonia. Kresimir's successor Stjepan I, 1030–58, preserved Croatian control over its Dalmatian coastal cities by means of an expanded Adriatic navy. He increased Croatian territory, and authority of the Croat bishop of Nin was extended northward to the Drava River. Byzantium restored good relations with Croatia during the reign of Petar Kresimir IV, 1058–75. The empire, in military decline, needed the Croats to defend Dalmatia from a rising Norman threat. In 1069 Kresimir was named commander of Byzantine Dalmatian forces. In his own lands, he loosely ruled over three provinces, Bosnia, the Slavic Dalmatian coast, and Slavonia. The latter, it appears, was highly autonomous and governed by a son-in-law of Hungarian King Bela I, 1061–63, Zvonimir Trpimirović. Zvonimir accepted Croatia's annexation of his province in return for his continued autonomous rule, an important voice in Croat state matters, and his own succession to the throne should Kresimir die childless. In 1075 Zvonimir, 1075–90, was crowned Croatian king following Kresimir's death without a direct male heir. An interesting cultural development in Croatia was its complete acceptance of Roman Catholicism with the use of the Slavic Glagolitic liturgy, which had spread to northern Dalmatia from Moravia. During the 1060s the use of Glagolitic by some Croatian churches became a major issue. At the time, Catholic reform was on the papal agenda, and a number of traditionally Latin-speaking high clergymen, seeking to standardize the liturgy, demanded the abolishment of Slavic. Krasimir IV favored the Latin liturgy. The Catholic reformers considered the Croatian Church corrupt, since many of its priests knew no Latin, wore beards, and married, all characteristic of Orthodox clergy. A 1060 synod in Split declared Latin the Croatian Church's official language and condemned the Slavic liturgy, along with priests' beards and marriages. Unrest grew among the Croats, with the nobles and high clergy supporting Latin and the lower clergy and general population sympathetic to the Slavic. A pro-Slavic revolt in 1064 was crushed. Although the Glagolitic liturgy persisted for centuries in isolated pockets, the Catholic Church in Croatia remained grounded in the Latin organization headed by the Pope. In addition to the troubles in distant Serbia and Dalmatia during the 11th century, the Byzantines faced unrest in regions under their more direct authority. In 1066 Vlachs and Bulgarians in Thessaly rebelled against high taxation and irregularities in its collection. Emperor Constantine X, Ducas, 1059–67, had ignored prior warnings of the rebellion, and, when it came, only deft negotiations with its secretly pro-imperial leader prevented its spread into Byzantine Macedonia and Bulgaria. Although a minor event, the Thessalian uprising demonstrated the utter lack of touch that the bureaucratic functionary rulers in the capital had with realities in the provinces. They forced their Balkan subjects to pay taxes in gold coin when hard currency had all but disappeared following the 7th century Slav and Bulgar settlements. They compounded the problem by progressively increasing tax rates and resorting to heavy-handed collection tactics. Their taxation policy only fostered despair and discontent. Another problem springing from the central government's insensitivity to provincial conditions was the rise of great magnates who owned private armies and fortresses. The increasing military neglect and ineptitude demonstrated by the functionary emperors, caused by their fear of the powerful families who monopolized command of the provincial troops, only succeeded in privatizing military forces throughout the empire. Beginning in the 10th century, the provincial military magnates increasingly grew independent of the central authorities and, by the opening of the 13th century, essentially held large areas of Macedonia and Greece as autonomous family domains. Their absorption of villages obligated to supply troops to the provincial forces greatly weakened the military capabilities of the traditional theme system and led to increased use of mercenaries in the Byzantine army. Outside threats to the Byzantine Balkans caused serious problems once Byzantium's military decline became obvious. Particularly troublesome was the mayhem caused by the Turkic Pechenegs. Following the conquest of Bulgaria, they became the empire's immediate neighbors in the northeast Balkans. Former Byzantine allies used to harassing the Bulgarians, the Pechenegs saw no reason to cease raiding south of the Danube after the Byzantine victory. Unable to defend its Danubian border adequately, Byzantium enlisted some outlawed Pecheneg rebels to serve as frontier defense troops. Their continuous raiding north of the Danube against the main Pecheneg body sparked a retaliatory invasion of the empire. Although the Pecheneg invaders were defeated and many were captured and used as either mercenary frontier guards or settlers, the Byzantines found themselves with a large and unruly horde of Turkic nomads within their borders. The ineffectual Emperor Constantine Monomachos let himself be drawn into the continued squabble between the former rebels and the main branch of Pechenegs with unfortunate results. His intervention in Pecheneg affairs served only to unite them in rebellion against imperial authority. 3 Byzantine armies led by inept courtiers met defeat at the hands of the rebel Pechenegs, who proceeded to pillage and plunder Thrace and Moesia with impunity. Only after mercenary units composed of Varangian, Rus, Imperial Guardsmen and Anatolian mountaineers finally defeated a large Pecheneg force did the rebellion officially end in 1052. Pecheneg raiding and brigandage, however, continued for decades afterward, causing untold economic disruption in the Balkans and forcing the government to make repeated extortion payments in return for protection or peace. The establishment of the Pechenegs within the empire also had repercussions for Byzantine foreign relations. When the now resident Pechenegs began raiding northward into Hungary, the Magyars retaliated by attacking Byzantium in 1059. Although peace was swiftly restored, continued Pecheneg incursions into Magyar territories led the Magyars to attack the empire again in the late 1060s, which resulted in their capturing several Danubian cities. A third Magyar attack in the early 1070s, for the same reasons, ended with the Hungarians briefly in possession of Belgrade and firmly in control of eastern Slavonia. To add to the Byzantines' woes, during the mid-1060s a new Turkic steppe nomadic people, the Oghuz, crossed the Danube into the empire and proceeded to ravage Moesia, Thrace, Macedonia, and northern regions of Greece. An outbreak of plague struck down many of the invaders, causing the survivors either to flee or to join the imperial forces as mercenaries. The Oghuz had been pushed into the Balkans by yet another group of Turkic steppe people, the Cumans. They waited in the steppe country wings north of the Danube delta for a future opportunity to raid the empire. Another foreign threat to the Byzantine Balkans emerged in Italy during the 1060s. There the Normans, descendants of Vikings who had settled in France a couple of centuries earlier and had been fighting as allies of the Pope, were busy expelling the Byzantines from southern Italy and Sicily. They succeeded completely when they captured Bari in 1071. Despite political differences with the Pope, those master warriors were firmly committed to Catholicism and viewed the Orthodox Byzantines as schismatic, traitorous enemies of the faith. Having taken southern Italy, they naturally turned to continuing their struggle against the hated eastern heretics by crossing the Adriatic and attacking them on their Balkan home soil. The Normans moved first against northern Dalmatia in 1074 but were repelled by the Venetians after some transitory initial successes. As a consequence, Venice again claimed suzerainty over Dalmatia based on the old prerogatives granted it by Basil II. Stymied in the north, the Normans, led by Robert Guiscard, died 1085, turned their attention farther south in 1085 and assaulted Byzantine-controlled Durrës in a combined land and sea operation. The recently crowned Byzantine Emperor Alexios I, Komnenos, 1081–1118, moved against them with whatever forces he could muster, along with a Serb contingent led by Constantine Bodin, the son of Zayton ruler Mihailo and a former captive of the empire. As a gesture of Zayton's Serb anti-Byzantine sentiment, Bodin had recently married an Italian princess whose family was pro-Norman, and he may have contracted a secret alliance with the Normans prior to their invasion. In any event, while the allied Venetian fleets succeeded in breaking the Norman invasion's naval component, in return for their services, Alexios essentially turned all Byzantine maritime carrying trade over to the Venetians and granted them total administrative and fiscal autonomy. Bodin and his troops sat out the land battle that resulted in Alexios's defeat, the loss of his army, and the Normans' capture of Durrës. After their victory, the Normans pushed deep into the empire, passing through Epirus and Macedonia into Thessaly. Fortunately for the Byzantines, an uprising in the Normans' Italian possessions forced Guiscard and most of his men to return to Italy. Durrës was garrisoned and left as the Normans' Balkan foothold for renewed efforts against the Byzantines. Guiscard, however, died of the plague before he could renew his Balkan operations. Alexios managed to recapture Durrës and then attacked and defeated his treacherous Serbian ally in 1090. The loss sparked a civil war within Zeta among Bodin's relatives, and, in the confusion, the local rulers, Zupans, of Rashka, Bosnia, and Zahumli broke free of Zayton control. Zeta itself was forced to accept Byzantine overlordship and lost its leadership role among those Serbs who continued to oppose the Byzantines. That mantle passed to the rulers of Rashka. In the early 1090s Rashka was ruled by Vukan, 1083 to about 1122, who styled himself Veliki, Great, Zupan. He controlled a number of semi-autonomous local Zupans from his capital at Novi Pazar. In 1090 he started raiding imperial territory around Kosovo against Little Byzantine opposition because the Pechenegs were raising serious problems for Alexios at the time. When in 1092 the Byzantines were able to retaliate against him, Buchan defeated them, but a second Byzantine invasion forced him to sue for peace and swear homage to Alexios. Soon after the emperor departed from Rashka, however, Buchan renounced the treaty and expanded southward, capturing Skopje. By 1095 Alexios once again marched on Buchan, who then swore to another peace with the empire, providing Alexios with hostages, including his son Urash, as a guarantee of his word. In all of those affairs, Buchan obviously operated as an independent player and not a Zayden vassal.